There's a skill almost every man alive today learned as a little boy. And to be fair, it also serves every man alive today. It helps us push through. It helps us achieve things. It helps us carry the extra weight and genuinely serve people we care about. It makes us useful and capable and dependable people. And at the very same time, it often destroys our relationships. This skill that we learned as boys can make us harder to reach. It can make us harder to know, harder to love. In some cases, this skill becomes the reason she leaves. So what is this skill? And how does something that is so useful to us have this other side that is so costly? Today on the podcast, we're talking about grit. Stay with me. This is Reclaiming the Gentleman. I'm Dave Lashansky. I feel fairly safe in saying that if you were listening to this podcast, man or not, at some point in your childhood, you learned grit. Maybe it was a moment when you were in pain and someone told you to just suck it up. And you understood, like instantly, that there wasn't really another option. That there wasn't going to be care there. There wasn't going to be space for your sadness or your pain. There's just going to be more if you didn't stop whining, if you didn't stop crying, if you didn't get it together. And so you did. And as I said at the beginning, this is in so many ways an immensely useful skill to have as a human being. Because life always contains hard parts. All of us are going to struggle at some point and face pain and meet moments that make us want to quit. And grit, resilience, endurance, a willingness to bear discomfort for the sake of something more important matters so much, right? It helps us build things and persist through hardship and grow. Grit is an essential element of growing. But something really dangerous happens when we start to really identify with grit. In some ways, over-identify with grit. When grit stops being something that we can access when we need it and becomes who we are, what do you think happens? What happens when a boy learns not just how to endure pain, but that enduring pain without complaining about it is what makes him worthy, is what makes him respectable, is what makes people like him. For a lot of us, that's where the trouble starts. Because then grit isn't just about strength, it's about your identity. And when grit becomes an indelible part of your identity without any counterbalance, which is often how it shows up, it creates, honestly, the world we're living in right now. A world where so many men have friends, but they can't actually tell the truth about what they're going through to them. A world where so many relationships start with chemistry and promise and desire, right? But then they start to go flat once real emotional intimacy is required. Right? A world where women are longing for their men to really show them their devotion, to open up to them, but where the opening often comes all at once and unpracticed, years overdue and built up, and with no other resources to channel that into, right? That's important. Because the problem's not that a man has feelings or that a woman can't handle honest feelings. The problem is that when we spend decades using grit to survive without even thinking about it, right? Just naturally, this is what we are trained to do. And we finally find this place where it feels safe to just unload, to unburden, it can't also be the only place you allow yourself to feel, right? No relationship, and I say this all the time in this podcast, but it's so important. No relationship can carry one man's emotions all by itself. No partner of yours can be the sole container for what is usually a lifetime of buried pain, or pain that has been buried for a lifetime. And when she becomes the only place where he puts down the weight, it might feel great at first, and it might even feel like closeness. But if not right away, in time, it will become too much pressure for the relationship alone to hold. I hear versions of this story from women all the time. And I hear the other side of it from men too. Men who are never taught how to feel safely, how to speak honestly before they're actually drowning in the physical sensation, the physical discomfort, or being overcome by emotion, right? To try to figure out how to be vulnerable without completely falling apart. And it's an issue. And it's exactly what I want to help change. And if we're going to change it, if we're going to change this pattern where men don't know how to show up with vulnerability to their relationships without falling apart completely, we have to understand the root of the issue, right? We have to understand what grit is and what it gives us and why it becomes so overdeveloped in so many of us. But most importantly, we want to learn how to balance it so that we can succeed not only in effort and service and growth, but also in knowing who we are, in telling the truth about ourselves, and in growing our capacity for love and real connection too. Because intimacy, the kind of intimacy that keeps sex alive after decades, that makes love and human connection rich and nourishing and valuable to us, requires more than grit. It requires having agency with your grit, right? Being able to experience the depth of connection that, frankly, so many in our society are missing out on requires you to know how to wear the armor of grit when life calls for it, and how to take it off when love calls for that. To experience the fullness of being human, you have to be able to loosen the protection that grit is offering you. And most men actually learn the opposite. And here's why. Because we, as men, love to bond through grit, right? We bond on teams where strength and skill and endurance are tested. We bond on adventures where we challenge ourselves. We bond in effort and pushing, improving ourselves, and in overcoming challenges. And there's something truly beautiful about that. In fact, it's a gift. It's something that every man should also still have in his life. It's not a bad thing that we bond in this way. It's something that I seek out in my own life, and that I've learned we can't really fake or replace as adults. We need that kind of relationship with each other. It matters. But for most of us, that's not going to be enough. If we want a real, deep, honest, thriving relationship, especially with a woman, then we also have to learn how to meet emotional challenges with equal fervor. And that is a very different skill. In some ways, it's the mirror image of the skill of grit. You might be thinking you've got this figured out, that you know how to take off that armor. But if you're coming up with the version of you that can get other people to open up, that's not it, right? It's not the polished version of you that knows how to sound emotionally intelligent, right? That knows the words. A lot of those things, if we're being honest, are still just performance. They're still just grit in disguise. And what actually creates deeper connection, deeper intimacy and trust and respect, what actually creates that is allowing space for the parts of you that are unfinished. The parts that are still raw, that are still being revealed even to you. right? You have to open yourself to the part of you that's not fully figured out, that you might not even fully understand, and that honestly, you might feel like you're not really in control of it. That's not usually the part of you bring to work or the part that you bring to places where you're expected to perform. But it also can't be a part of you that only comes out when you finally feel safe with this one woman who's made you feel safe, right? The growth that so many men are actually longing for when their partner says she wants more of them, when they feel numb, when they feel directionless, when they feel cut off from their purpose. It doesn't require your grit. It requires your sensitivity. Right? That's this counterbalance to grit that I've been talking about. That's what shows up when you take off the armor. Cultivating sensitivity requires you to perceive and learn about and accept the experience you are having inside. To cultivate sensitivity, you have to be willing to untangle the knot that grit creates in us when we rely on it so often. And all of us do these days. When we begin to untangle that knot, it opens us up to so much more of life. You will see more color. You will smell more fragrances. You will hear more. You will be present for more, right? This is the secret. In my own journey, my own course of development, I started to realize that the grit I had learned was built around never acknowledging what anger was inside of me. And underneath that anger, the sadness. I spent so much of my life being incredibly nice, right? Making sure everyone around me felt heard and understood and cared for and appreciated. And in some ways, this is my superpower, right? This is not all bad. But the entire time I was doing that, I was also ignoring my own need and my own desire for those same things, to feel understood and seen and cared for. Right? Anytime that life or my relationships gave me an opportunity to receive that kind of love, I unconsciously treated it like a test of grit. Right? How much longer could I go without watering that part of me? How strong was I if I didn't need the very thing that I was giving so freely to other people? It was honestly a little bit masochistic, but more than that, it was almost entirely unconscious. It was a habit. It was a pattern until I realized that I had no clue what I wanted in life. That I was resentful without any good reason that I could explain for being resentful. When I sat in therapy, when I joined men's groups, when I went on retreats, I opened to a part of myself that scared me. It was so angry and so sad and so alone. But by just allowing myself to perceive it, opening that lid that had been closed so tightly, just enough to see it, to learn something about it, to get closer to it and accept that it exists inside of me, just doing that changed everything. It changed the way that I saw my life, that I connected with my wife. It changed how I connected with my friends and what kind of friendships I pursued, the kinds of people I spent time around. It helped me see what I really wanted to do with my life. And so much became clearer just because I became sensitive to all the things and the moments and the romance and the sweetness and the sorrow and the grief that I'd never slowed down enough to recognize because I was so over-identified with grit, not as a tough guy, but as a nice guy, as a kind person, as someone who makes other people feel good enough to open up to them. Right? And it's not that I was never present in those times. It's not that I didn't get those glimpses of life's beauty, But so much of my bandwidth, my conscious bandwidth, was being used up trying to ignore those things that I was shoving down, that anger, that pain, that stuff that my grit covered up and ran over. And when I finally learned that I could take that armor off, the same armor that I'd unconsciously put on when I was a boy, the same armor that so many of us wear when we are over-identifying with grit, right? Allowing ourselves to become sensitive in the right times and the right circumstances shows us how important that skill is too, right? How much of life and relationships we will miss without that sensitivity. And this is the skill that I believe that men are being called to learn right now. Not just how to endure life and this crazy world, but how and when to disarm by choice when that's what's needed. Because what we risk if we don't learn how to do that isn't just our comfort. We risk meaningful, lasting, secure, beautiful relationships and connection, honest, supportive friendships. We miss the richness of that feeling of knowing you're supported. We risk the kinds of connections that really fill us up and challenge us and change us. We risk missing some of the greatest parts of life: love, connection, truth, aliveness. If we ignore our sensitivity and rely only on grit to carry us through, life may still look functional from the outside, right? We're going to get by, but it's not going to feel whole, and you're not going to feel present to it. And finding where that sensitivity lives inside of you, learning how to access it and stay with it, is one of the hardest and also most worthwhile things that a man raised to value grit can do. And I promise you, the journey is worth it. Thank you for listening to this episode of Reclaiming the Gentle Man. I would love to stay in touch with you. You can follow along with me on Instagram at Dave_Lashansky. You can go to davelashansky.com, enter your email in the fields, and you will be notified as soon as the next live workshop where we talk about exactly this: how to cultivate your sensitivity, how to get closer to your wife or your partner if you're in a committed relationship, and the skills you can bring to a new relationship if you're gearing up for that. Go to davelashansky.com, put your email in. I'd love to hear from you. If you're getting something out of this podcast, the best way you can support me in making it is sharing it with a friend, leaving a rating and review, and subscribing on whatever platform you listen on. Wherever this finds you, wishing you a beautiful day or night. I'll be back in a week.